Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. It's nice to be in Las Vegas, get a chance to get out of Washington, D.C., which is always a kind of a madhouse, and take a break from Washington, D.C. You know, we got a lot of things going on in Washington, D.C. As we know, Donald Trump is the president today, but when this thing got started, there were 18 people running for the Republican nomination for president. And of course, only one became the nominee. But in those 18, one of them was Jeb Bush, the former Florida governor. And Jeb Bush's brother was the governor, and Jeb Bush's father was a governor. So Jeb Bush running for president was a Bush family version of No Child Left Behind. Let's see, what else is going on? Oh, I was at the White House the other day for the briefing. You know, Sarah Huckabee Sanders has a daily briefing every day. And it was running a little late that day, and so we were all sitting around in the briefing room and just kind of, you know, talking among ourselves and wasting a little time until the briefing started. And somebody said, you know, it's been 18 years since Bill Clinton was the president. 18 years. And we still don't have a name for his time in office. I mean, Jack Kennedy was Camelot, and Lyndon Johnson was the New Frontier, and Ronald Reagan was the Reagan Revolution. And we still don't have a time. The guy was in office for 8 years, and we have no name for his time in office. So I suggested sex between the Bushes. I see one side of the room's a little quicker than the other. But, you know, we live in the greatest country in the whole world. The greatest country in the whole world. Canada, the United States, two greatest countries in the whole world. And every day when we get out of bed, we have a rendezvous with the destiny of America's greatness. The opportunity that we have every single day. You saw those videos before. You know, it's everything. Think of all the people who come to America just for their medical treatment and education and everything. Did you come out here on an airplane? I did. It was made in Seattle, Washington. Were you on the interstate highway system to get here? I was. Do you know when Dwight Eisenhower started the interstate highway system? In 1957, it soon became the largest public works project in the world, and it still is. America's interstate highway system. So everything is great. And I said, you know, people come here for their medical treatment. Now, not everything runs as smoothly as we like it. I had an earache last week. And the only thing worse than an earache is an earache on an airplane. And I knew I was coming out to visit with you folks. And so I went to see my doctor. And my doctor has a new office manager. And she said, okay, you go into this room over here and undress. And then you go to, that's the dressing room. Then you go over to this room over here, which is the treatment room. And I said, I have an earache. She said, I'm in charge now. You go in there and get your clothes off. I said, okay. So I went in there, and I'm taking my clothes off, and another guy comes in, and he's taking his clothes off. And I said, this is just as silly as hell, isn't it? I'm here for an earache. He said, you're lucky. I'm here to fix a Xerox machine. But America is the greatest country in the whole world. You know, there's no folks building leaky boats trying to sneak into Cuba. There's no folks trying to get out of Texas into Mexico. Everybody's coming to America. And so, as I said, everything, you know, the iron workers who put this building together, and the iron workers who put all the buildings across Canada and America together, that's a symbol of America's greatness. As I said, the airplane that I rode out here on and everything. And I brought another symbol of America's greatness with me today. A lava lamp. Now, you might be saying to yourself, why does he think a lava lamp is a symbol of America's greatness? And I'll tell you why. A child was born in Harvey, North Dakota in 1916. Who here has been to Harvey, North Dakota? All right, let's do it this way. Who knows North Dakota's a state now? So this child was born in 1916 in Harvey, North Dakota, and 18 years later he was a senior in high school. That was 1934. In 1934, America was still in the grips of the Great Depression. And this kid didn't have any money, and he didn't know anybody had any money. There were no federally guaranteed loans in those days. His parents didn't have any money. It's a teeny little wide spot in the road in rural North Dakota, and he and his buddies were sitting around one day, and he says, well, I guess we're not going to go to college. But the guy I'm talking about said, wait a minute, this is America. This is the greatest country in the whole world. This is a country, if you want to use your back and use your brain and play by the rules and work hard, dreams can come true in America, the land of opportunity. So he took a year off. He lived with his parents so he had no living expenses. Took every odd job he could and put every nickel he made into the bank, and he got enough money not for his tuition, but for the down payment on his tuition. So he went off to college, and he graduated number 2 in his class. Took him 5 years to get through. Now, how come a guy who graduates number 2 in his class took 5 years to get through? Because he had to work 12 months a year. He had a job, an assembly line at a factory. And every semester he had to balance what shifts were available at the factory with what his class schedule was. So he worked 12 months a year, and he went to school 12 months a year, and graduated number 2 in his class in 5 years. Well, when you get out of college, you think about your career and you think about a family. He had a very unusual career and a very unusual family. Let me tell you about it. At age 43, he was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. At age 4, there's only 500 of these people, and at age 43, he became, you remember, work hard, use your back, use your brain, play by the rules? He became the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And that company made radios and televisions and tape recorders and record players and all the consumer appliances of the day. And this was the 60s now. The company's based in Chicago. And this was the 60s, and America was going through an age of affluence. And also color television was becoming very, very popular, very commonplace. And the 3 networks were having almost all their programming switched to color TV. And so this fellow who was in the television business said, well, I need to build a factory just to build color televisions. So he contacted governors from various states and said, I'd like to build this factory, which will be, X amount of iron worker and other construction jobs, and then Y amount of permanent jobs. Well, of course, the governors come rushing to his office, and they say, build it in my state, build it in my state. And the guy, the CEO of the company, does his due diligence and figures out the best place to go is to Arkansas. Now, this is 1966. The Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, and this is 1966. So the governor of Arkansas in 1966 was a guy named Orville Faubus. Now, then in 1964, the Civil Rights Act passed, and the southern states had what they call massive resistance. They said, we don't care what Washington does. We're going to do our own thing. So they're going to announce the opening of this factory, and the governor of Arkansas, Orville Faubus, and the CEO of this company have the shovels. They have the golden shovels, and they're going to turn the first spade of dirt, and it's symbolic, and the media is going to be there, and all this thing is going to... This grand opening of this building is going to create all these construction jobs temporarily and all these permanent jobs building color television sets. At noon, the ceremony is to take place. At 10 minutes of noon, the governor of Arkansas, Orville Faubus, goes rushing in to the CEO of this company and says, wait. I just heard that you're going to pay colored folks, the term of the day, colored folks and white folks, the same rate of money. I understand they're going to be using the same bathrooms and having lunch in the same lunchroom, and you're going to pay them the same. They're going to work alongside each other. They're going to get promoted based on their abilities, not on their skin color. And the CEO says, yeah, of course. And Orville Faubus says, wait a second, this is Arkansas, and we don't do it that way. We have to make some adjustments, and we have to make some this and that, and your people need to... And the CEO says, no, we're not doing it that way. America's a first-class country. First-class countries don't have second-class citizens. And that's the way we're going to do it here. And the governor says, no. See, your people got to talk to my people, and we got to make some adjustments. And the guy says, it's 2 minutes of 12. I'm going to go out there and announce all these jobs for iron workers and other construction trades and permanent jobs building these color television sets, or I'm going to go out there and announce, because your governor is a bigot and an idiot, I guess that's redundant, I'm taking these jobs somewhere else. And the governor says, okay. And they opened the factory, and that factory's still operating in eastern Arkansas. Well, this was a Fortune 500 company, smallish, and it was very successful. So a larger company bought the television company, and the CEO, of course, he's gone. He's out of a job. So he said, well, what am I going to do? I've worked so hard all my life. What am I going to do now? And just then, the lava lamp company became available for sale. And he bought it. He bought the lava lamp company and was going through a rough time, but using his management skills, he nursed it back to health, and that fellow and his family owned the lava lamp company for 40 years. And in the last 5 years of the 40 years that family owned that company, more lava lamps were made in America and consumed in the previous cumulative 35 years. So I said he had a very, very non-traditional professional life. He had a very non-traditional family life as well. He had 9 children. 9 children. And they all went to private school. Let me do the math for you. 9 times 8 years of elementary school, 9 times 4 years of high school, and 9 times 4 years of college is 144 years of private school tuition. And this fellow was in his office one day, and one of his 9 children comes in, and the fellow's writing a check, or a tuition check, for another private school tuition someplace. And the child says to his father, Dad, doesn't it make you crazy? Just crazy, see all your money go out the door every day? And the guy said, it's not my money, it's America's money. Only in America could a penniless child from a wide spot in the road in North Dakota have the economic opportunity to make televisions and make lava lamps and all the economic opportunity that comes with being an American. Only in America could we have an education system where all 9 of my children get to go to the college of their choice that best suits their aptitudes and interest. So it's not my money, it's America's money, the fellow said. So that's why I brought the lava lamp along with me today, because I do think it's a symbol, just like the iron workers, the stuff the buildings that you make, the Boeing airplane that I came on, and all the things that all symbols are all products of America. The greatness of America, the opportunity that each of us have every single day, those are all symbols of the greatness of America, as is this lava lamp. The other reason I brought the lava lamp along with me today is because I'm very proud of that fellow from North Dakota, because he's my father. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm going to turn the lava lamp off right now, and all of the lava, wax and paraffin, is going to fall to the bottom and become cold and inert. And that's what happened to your power of self-government. If you don't exercise your power of self-government, like this lava, it will fall to the bottom and be cold and inert. And it's very important that in Canada, you go to your provincial government and you go to Ottawa. And in Washington, D.C., in America, it's important you go to your state government and you go to Washington, D.C. Because the provincial and Canadian government and the state government and the U.S. government, they are your unwanted, uninvited, but always present partner in your business. And you heard the presentation before about the political process. It's very important. You see, your elected officials in Canada or the U.S., they cannot do one single thing for you if they don't know your name and know your issue. I'll repeat that. They can't do one single thing for you if they don't know your name and know your issue. And that's why you have to get involved. That's why you have to stay involved. And that's why you cannot let your lava, your power of self-government fall to the bottom. And is Ross Templeton in here? Ross, I'm going to give you this lava lamp. It's a gift from my family. And I want you to turn the lava lamp on every day in your office. And as that lava moves, that's to remind you, Ross, to remind all of you, and for you to remind everybody else, to make sure to exercise your power of self-government. And Kevin Hilton, I got one for you too. So it's important that you do that. Now, whether you're a rod buster, an ironhead, or a welder, whoever you are, you're the GC or the end user, the government is your always, always present, uninvited partner in your business. So if you have a partner in your business, you want to control it, right? You want to control that partner, and that's very important that you do. And I'll give you a couple of examples. You see this knife? I couldn't take it on the airplane. Kathy Finch in your office sent it out with the supply she sent out. I can't get this on the airplane. Now, when 9/11 happened, Homeland Security said, okay, no knives. And this blade is 1.5 inches, but I can't get this on an airplane after 9/11. So about a year ago, Homeland Security said, you know what? We can allow these little knives. See how small that blade is? We can allow that, can't we? Sure, that'll be safe. That doesn't imperil anybody's safety. Well, the flight attendants union went nuts. Now in Washington, D.C., I can tell you, and the Washington, D.C. veterans will tell you, the flight attendants union is not a power broker. They're not a big force in Washington, D.C. But they sure got riled up, and so they all went to Capitol Hill. They all wore their uniforms, so they were visible. And they went to all 535 members of Congress, and they said, you know what? If you put this knife in a carotid artery, you can bleed out like in 2 minutes. Do not allow knives of any size on airplanes. And so the 535 members of Congress, they got the message. And they said to Homeland Security, no knives, no size at all. Because you know why? They were unified. You heard Eric talk about the outdated 1971 OSHA regulations. You can do the same thing. See, Congress controls everything. They control the money. They appropriate all the money. And they can say in this appropriation, none of this, not 1 penny of this appropriation can be used to enforce such and such. Or some of this money must be used to write or enforce or regulate such and such. Congress controls everything. And who controls Congress? We do. We do at the ballot box every other November. And there's other ways to control Congress. You can vote for them. You can do what my wife does. They give her like an 8 or 9 block area, and she goes right before the election campaign. She does what's called a lit drop, which is a literature drop, and she puts literature in everybody's mailbox, and she knocks on doors, and she says, vote for this candidate for this reason. And she doesn't write a check, but she contributes to the candidate of her choice. And you can write a check. You can write a check. Let's say you write a check. Send it to the candidate of your choice. How about if you take that check and put it together with yours and yours and yours and yours and yours and yours and you put them all together. It's called a PAC, a Political Action Committee. The Ironworkers have this terrific PAC. And while 100 checks speaks more loudly than 1 check, 100 contacts. Now, I used to urge people to write Congress. You can't do that anymore because it goes to a facility way out in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and they x-ray it or something to make sure there's nothing bad stuff in there. And then it has to be sent to Capitol Hill, and it has to be sorted. But you can email them. You can text them. Members of Congress are really big on social media. They love social media. Facebook and all the other platforms. They love all that stuff. They want to hear from you. You know why? Because they want you to like what they're doing. And you want to like what they're doing, but they can't help you, I'm repeating myself, if they don't know your name and they don't know what your issue is. I'll give you another example. In Illinois, the Illinois Restaurant Association was being sued by ASCAP. ASCAP is ASCPA, American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. They're the ones who own the intellectual rights to music. And you know, you go to a restaurant, and you sit in a bar, you go in a restaurant, wherever you go, and they have that background music, what my kids call elevator music. Well, ASCAP owns the intellectual property rights on that. And ASCAP said to the Illinois Restaurant Association, you're going to play our music, we want to get paid. And the Illinois Restaurant Association said, we're not making any money on that. There's no money to pay you with. So ASCAP went to the Illinois legislature, the capital of Illinois, Springfield. They went to the Illinois legislature in Springfield, and they tried to get a legislative fix. The Illinois Restaurant Association had just hired a brand new executive director. And on her second day in office, she went down to Springfield, and there was a hearing in the Illinois Senate on this very issue about the intellectual property and ASCAP and all that. The senator who chaired that subcommittee is her senator. She lives in his senatorial district. And so after the hearing, she goes up and said, Senator, my name is such and such, and I'm with the Illinois Restaurant Association, things like that. Says, we're very upset with this. You can't do this. We don't make any money on this. We'll just turn this music off. We don't make any money. There's no money to share to pay anybody else. And the senator says, well, you and your members are very upset about this, aren't you? And she says, yes. She says, really? The senator says, really? How come nobody wrote me one single letter? okay? They can't do anything for you unless they know who you are and what your issue is. And if you eliminate abortion and gun control or gun safety, depending on what side of the issue you're on, and immigration, those 4 or 5 hot button issues, 50 contacts is a big deal on the Senate or the House side, and in Ottawa too. 50 contacts is a big deal. And I know there's more than 50 people right in this little section right here. You can do this. You can do this. It's really easy because they want to hear from you, because they want to do what you want them to do, so you'll say thank you at the ballot box every other November. I'll give you another example. There was a young lady who had some very serious cancer, and she lost her ovaries and everything, all her reproductive items, everything in her reproductive system. And she was very sick, and through the diagnosis process and the surgery and the recovery process, she couldn't work and she didn't have any income. She had a federally guaranteed loan. And she said, wait a minute, can't the federal government allow me to suspend payments interest-free on this loan? And she wrote one letter to the editor of the New York Times. And then she multiplied that letter, and she found other people who also wanted to suspend, pay off their full loan, but suspend it interest-free until they got back on their feet. And she got a group of people, and they went to all 535 members of Congress with this copy of this letter to the editor saying, these are federal loans. Certainly, when we are seriously ill, you can suspend them. We'll pay them. We just need a suspension process. And last summer, Donald Trump signed that legislation. So that was one 36-year-old woman who wrote one letter to the editor of the New York Times and then got some folks and went door to door in Capitol Hill. And they got their legislation passed. You can do this. But you have to have a presence. You have to have a Ross Templeton. Okay? When Google first got started, somebody said, you're going to have a Washington office? And they said, no, we're not going to have a Washington office. We don't need a Washington office. We're a computer company. We have no product. We're just, in the cyberspace. Somebody said, no, I think you really need a Washington office. They said, no, we don't need a Washington office. Well, the Federal Election Commission every year publishes their records if you're a registered lobbyist and how much you spent on lobbying. You know who spent more money than any organization last year in Washington, D.C. on lobbying? Google. They went from we don't need an office to they're the number one spender in Washington, D.C. Everybody needs a voice. Stealing a line from our friends at the lottery, it's impossible to win if you don't play. So it's important to play. It's important to be part of the process. The other thing I said, you have to get involved in the process. There's a multiplier effect. Let us say there's one contact, be it a letter, a text, an email, Facebook, whatever it is. Or there's 10 contacts, or there's 20 contacts, or whatever it is. Many offices on Capitol Hill, because I used to do this, it's a multiplier effect. You figure, well, if 10 people wrote a letter or posted on my Facebook or whatever, let's multiply that by 50 or by 75. Depends if you're from Wyoming or California, what the multiplier effect is. But they say, well, if 10 people took time to send this text or this email, maybe that means there's 200 people out there. As I said, other than abortion and immigration and gun control and all that stuff, the real hot button issues, 50 contacts is considered a really big deal. This is not brain surgery. This is easy to do, and you can do it. And here's what's most important. It works. It's effective. It's important. It's also to find out which committees in Congress and in Parliament in Ottawa, which committees are important to you. And who are the chairmen of those committees? And who are the chairs of the subcommittees? Keep in mind that 99% of the work is done in a subcommittee. Because if it doesn't get out of subcommittee, it never goes to full committee, which means it never goes to the floor for the full vote. 99% of the work is done in subcommittee. Who is the chair on that subcommittee? Who serves on that subcommittee? Does he or she represent you in Congress or in Parliament? It's good. Get to know those people because they're important. They are the ones who control all the legislation. And the best thing to do is to establish an avenue of communication before you need to see them professionally. Do your kids play together on the same soccer team? Do you go to church together? Are you in the bowling league together? Establish those avenues of communication. then you can use those avenues of communication when you need to see someone to talk about a legislative or a regulatory issue. It's very important that you do this, and it's easy to do it because, see, it's a trade. It's a trade. They need your votes, they need your support, and you need their work in subcommittee and committee, and you need them to represent you. It's a trade. You need them, they need you, and they know they need you, and they will listen to you. And you can do whatever you want. It's just not major legislation. And you heard, Eric talk about the 1971 outdated OSHA rules. Congress controls OSHA with its appropriations. Congress controls everything. It controls the money. It controls the money. So it's very, very important that you do this. The other thing is you can't care who gets the credit. You just want your legislative and regulatory agenda achieved. You can't care who gets the credit. And I'll give you a story of how not getting who cares who's getting the credit is important. In Wisconsin, the bankers and the credit unions both had a piece of legislation in the Wisconsin Senate. Of course, bankers and credit unions, that's like Ford and Chevy, Coke and Pepsi. Those guys hate each other. And a member of the Wisconsin Senate looked at both pieces of bill and said, wait a second. If you look at this one, look at that one, there are four or five things in there that were the same, such as bankruptcy reform and having electronic signature being legal and things like that. And so that senator said, wait a second, why don't we take these 4 or 5 things that you guys agree on, we'll put it into one bill, I can get that passed. And the bankers and the credit union said, yeah, we agree on those, we'll work together on those. And so you have to cooperate with other groups, and you can't care who gets the credit. I'll give you an example of not caring who gets the credit. In the NBA, the National Basketball Association, all those teams have 12 players. Now, the first 5 players are the starting 5, and then the 6th and 7th players are the folks who go in and substitute for the starting 5 to give the starting 5 a rest from time to time. And the last 5 are basically the practice team for the first 5. They never get on the floor. They never get on the floor until the outcome of the game's already been decided. In the NBA, they call that garbage time. So one of the last 5 severely strained his ankle. And the doctor said, you go home and don't put 1 ounce of weight on that ankle for an entire week. You stay off that ankle. And so the Chicago Bulls needed somebody to be on the practice team. So they went back and signed to a 1-week contract. The last guy they cut in training camp. And he had a 1-week contract with the NBA. And during that 1 week, he got into 1 game, and he scored 2 points. 1 basket is 2 points. It's the same night that Michael Jordan scored 48 points. And to this day, that fellow with the 1-week contract is still talking about his career in the NBA, especially the night that he and Michael combined for 50 points. So just like the Wisconsin Senate, the bankers and the credit unions, they didn't care who got the credit. The senator took the credit. They got what they wanted. So you have to cooperate with your other groups. Who are your allies? Who are your advocates? And don't burn any bridges, because today's advocate might be tomorrow's ally. So it's very, very important. Grassroots citizen advocacy is a very important part of life. It's a very important part of self-government. And who gave us self-government? Who gave us self-government? Our heroes did. Each of us have a hero. Each of us have someone who crossed the ocean, or crossed the mountains, or crossed the desert to come to America and come to Canada to take their dream of self-government and turn it into our birthright. All of us have somebody who did that. Let me tell you about my hero. My hero is my grandmother Sweeney. Catherine Cunningham Sweeney stood about this tall, had a 4th grade education. At age 18, this is in the year 1900, at age 18, she decided to come to America, to leave her native Ireland, knowing that she may never see her parents again. And as it worked out, she never did. She never saw her parents again. But at age 18, she risked it all to come to America, the land of opportunity, the land of self-government, because the Brits were horrible to the Irish. The Irish Revolution was in 1926, so all of Ireland was a British colony until 1926, and this was the year 1900. The Brits did not allow freedom of assembly. Freedom of assembly, a constitutionally protected right that we're exercising at this moment. The only time that the Brits suspended the prohibition on freedom of assembly is during Irish wakes. And that's why you hear Irish wakes are loud, boisterous, party-like affairs. That's why they were loud, boisterous, party-like affairs, because that was the one time you had freedom of assembly, and the British government allowed everybody to get together. And the Brits didn't allow the Irish to openly practice their religion. And you couldn't vote unless you owned property. It's pretty hard to own property if they won't let you go to school past 4th grade. So for those and a whole bunch of reasons, she came to America. And she rode in a boat in 3rd class, except it was called steerage, because that's where you were. You were in the bowels of the boat where the steering mechanism is in the engine and the yuck and the muck and the noise and the grime and the dirt and all that. And I said, well, grandmother, why didn't you go up to the deck and get a little fresh air? And she said, well, the 1st class passengers have the deck on the bow of the boat. But the steerage passengers, 3rd class, our deck was behind the smokestack. There's not a lot of fresh air behind the smokestack. So she stayed with everybody else in the bottom of that boat for 8 days and 7 nights. And when they pulled into New York Harbor, they allowed all the 3rd class passengers to go up to the 1st class deck, which is on the bow of the boat. And everybody was joyous because, first of all, they were seeing land for the first time in 8 days. Second, they were seeing America. And my grandmother said she was overjoyed because she was from a little fishing village on the west coast of Ireland. She had never seen a 3-story building. So, if you go to New York Harbor, if you go to the right, that's the East River. You go to the left, that's the Hudson River. And you go in the Hudson River, and what do you see? The Statue of Liberty. What's it say on the base of the Statue of Liberty? It says, give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor, your teeming masses yearning to breathe free. And that's who my grandmother was, and that's who everybody else was on that boat. Because they all rushed up to the bow of the boat. And the bow of the boat was empty because all the 1st class passengers were in their cabins packing all their belongings. All the 3rd class passengers were wearing all of their belongings. So you go into Ellis Island, and a non-medically trained immigration officer would take 60 or 90 seconds to decide if you had a communicable disease or not. And if you had a communicable disease, you had to go stand in that line, which meant they were going to send you back to the tyranny for which you just escaped, or they would put you in quarantine. Or if you got to get into America, and that's why Ellis Island is called either the Isle of Tears or the Golden Door, you got to get into America. Well, it didn't take very long for people to figure out, well, when the immigration officers not looking, I can sneak out of that line and go over here into this pool over here. So the immigration officer said, well, I know how to fix that. If we put you in that line, we're going to put an X on your coat. We're going to put an X on your coat so you can't sneak over there. Our heroes are the ones who turned their dream of self-government into our birthrights. They dreamed their dream. They risk it all to give us the birthright of self-government. The very best thing we can do is to honor our heroes and to honor our countries, is to take that power of self-government, use it often, and use it well. Thank you so much for inviting me to your meeting. It was my pleasure to be with you today. Thank you very much. Thank you.